Hello, everyone. Having a nice day?
So far.
Awesome. Happy Thursday to all, and maybe we can get started now.
Sure.
So we have Brock Cooper from Snowflake Corporation, and he's one of a leading tech company throughout the USA. So we are like very glad he's here, and he'll be presenting the AI innovations. So again, a very exciting topic. So maybe I'll hand over to Brock.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
Okay, well, nice to meet everyone. Is this thing recording? It is? Okay, great. Okay, so just to introduce myself a little bit, I'm a sales engineer at Snowflake. And if you guys haven't heard of that title, I work on a sales team, but I'm the technical guy. Usually more like software-oriented products. You team up with an account executive who's more business focused. They kind of close the deals, kind of move the project along. And then I'm a sales engineer that works with two other account executives. And I work with the tech teams who are deciding which products they want to use. And so I help them make that decision, kind of show them what the future might look like using that tool. I live here locally in Utah, and I've been working at Snowflake for about 3.5 years. And so today, what I wanted to show you guys was a little bit about Snowflake. I'm sure not everyone here has a full understanding of what it is, but maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. But talk a little bit about that data space and what Snowflake brings to kind of the data world. Snowflake is used by corporations, like some of the largest corporations in the world. I happen to work on the public sector team. So my focus is state and local governments. And so I work with like state of Utah, state of Arizona, state of Colorado, and helping them also use these big data tools to be able to answer their questions. And then just to kind of explain how I got here to Snowflake, which is a very data heavy company, very data heavy skill set that I happen to have. I actually started my career in accounting. So I heard a few accounting majors here. Yeah. And so I got a degree in accounting and actually was a CPA. Worked at PwC for 2 years and got a CPA because they offered $5,000 as a bonus to get to pass the CPA exam. And they needed the money. And so I did that and then ended up getting a graduate degree at the University of Utah in information systems. With a focus on BI, and then started doing BI work, working in databases, and then worked for a company that was a partner with Domo, which is obviously a big player in the Utah market, and did a lot of Domo implementations. It was a company called Big Squid. They also had like an AI ML type of tool. Ended up getting sold to Click, which Click is a large player in the BI space too. And then I joined a company called Divvy, which was recently bought by Bill.com. So if you see the Bill.com sign kind of in Draper, that's where that building's at. And that was a very fast growing company. And when I joined, I was kind of tasked with getting a data warehouse started. They needed to have the reports and they had a very small database that was not efficient. It was a Postgres database, which is mainly meant for like smaller transactions. And so when I came in, I implemented Snowflake and got hands-on experience and then joined Snowflake just about 3 years ago. So what is Snowflake? Why are we even talking about this and what problem does Snowflake solve? The Snowflake, what we call data, so we eliminate data silos. What that means is that any organization, even if you think about UVU, there's a student information system, there's probably a finance app, there's HR solutions. And so they all have these different applications and they exist separately. But to get that full picture of your entire organization, you want to bring all that data together. And so in order to do that, that's obviously, that's what's called big data. Because each one of these applications, yeah, they may be small, but once you start bringing them together into one place, you need a place where you could store large amounts of data, also compute large amounts of data, meaning you have millions of rows here, you have millions of rows here, you need to join them together, figure out one unique picture of like a student, for example. And so that's what Snowflake focuses on. It's a data platform that's built for the cloud. And so you may have heard the term data warehouse. That's how you could kind of think of Snowflake. Snowflake is kind of in a unique position. There's a lot of other data warehouses out there. Microsoft has many solutions. AWS, Amazon, they have a solution called Redshift. Google has one called BigQuery. And so we kind of compete with these types of tools where people are trying to bring in their data. Snowflake is different, is that we're built for the cloud. When we say cloud, we're talking about AWS, Google Cloud, or like Microsoft Azure, where you can run these resources in the cloud using their infrastructure. You don't have to like have an on-premise solution. So what that means is that those solutions already existed, and we built our technology using their technology. And so we're kind of in an interesting position where we're partners with them. We're big spenders with like AWS, for example, but we also compete with them. So we're one of their biggest customers, but we're also one of their biggest competitors when it comes to data. So we call this delivered as a service, which means a lot of IT people, probably your peers out there in the information system space, they may be focusing on installing a database on a server. That's called, on-premise, that you have a server, it's installed there. Snowflake is different. We do all of that work for you. And so you don't have to worry about installing infrastructure or anything like that. And so just real quickly, just to talk about where we're going. We can see that we've been around since 2012 and then have kind of progressed to have more of a data platform focus, not just a data warehouse, but where people can store large amounts of data, build applications on it. And now we're one of the fastest growing companies currently on the stock market. I'll skip this. But one of our major focuses is on our customer success. The way that we work is that customers pay us only when they consume, which means when they're using our product, when they're running queries, that's drawing down on how much they've spent with us. So if, a customer spends $100,000 with us a year, then we only earn revenue when they're spending it. And so we have a major focus to say we want our customers to use the product. This is different than other pieces of software out there where they may sell a license. So if you sell like 1,000 licenses to a company, and they assign them all out to, their staff, people may never even log in, but it doesn't matter. You've already paid the licenses and it's gone. That's different than Snowflake. You have to use the product. And so we have a major focus on wanting our customers to actually use the product. So this is a little bit technical, but this is where Snowflake fits in. This is what we're talking about, data silos. You have, CSV files, you have SQL Server databases, you have accounting information systems, you have financial systems, HR systems, all those various different systems that sit out there that people are using. But to be able to report on that, this is kind of, if you ever hear of data engineering, this is data engineering. It's connecting to those systems and getting them into a database like Snowflake right here. And so all of your data throughout your entire organization is sitting in one place. And then from there, you can easily plug in and do like machine learning or business intelligence, like any reporting on that data in one place. And we do that because there may be literally hundreds of systems within an organization. And to go to each individual one doesn't make sense. And so bringing it into one place and then also giving access and then what we call governance, which means protecting your data, making sure that only certain people can see certain pieces of data. That all happens here in Snowflake.
Okay, Rob, quick question.
Yeah.
Who are your major customers in Utah?
Yeah, major customers in Utah. So Divview is one we have worked with, the state of Utah. Vivint is a huge customer. Then I'm trying to think who else might be, but like someone like Domo is technically a customer as well. Even though it's more that they're building their system with Snowflake.
A second question is on the left-hand side, we are seeing all those data, right?
Yeah.
Silos, XLS, JSON, SQL Server. Isn't it like very common that most of the organizations have these type, right? CSV, JSON.
Oh yeah.
SQL, Oracle. Yeah, data lakes, app, definitely. Right?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, the most popular are like in any given enterprise is SQL Server and Oracle. SQL Server is a Microsoft product. So if there's anyone who's subscribed to Microsoft, UVU, I just happen to know that the IT team is very Microsoft focused. And so they have, maybe probably thousands of SQL Server databases.
Thanks.
Yeah, any other questions? Go for it.
Yes, so you mentioned customers draw down on their account.
Yeah.
It's $100,000. They pay that $100,000 up front, and then they draw down against it.
Yeah, it kind of works like, so there's a couple of ways of doing it. I would say, the majority of our customers, they're going to pay up front. So they're going to, pay us $100,000 in cash. Then they're going to draw down on it. If they only used like, let's just say $60,000 of it, then that 40,000 rolls over to the next year. And so you don't lose it, but you do kind of accumulate it over the years. Yeah, I think you had a
I'm
question.
wondering about the data corruption as you move stuff around. How much is it degraded as it moves? And how's that improved or gotten worse over the years because of the amount of data?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this is why the concept of, if you've ever heard of the concept of a data lake just means like pure replication of this into a different system. And so what used to happen is that you would connect tools, like Informatica, for example. This is like an ETL tool that would do data transformations, which was like data cleansing and things like that. So you used to do it here. And so it'd get pulled into like an ETL server, things would happen and it would spit out. And then people would look at the data and say, what the heck is this? This doesn't look anything like, the data that exists over here. So the new concept is data lakes. It's not new, but it's a concept that's probably been very popular for the past 10 to 15 years. But what that goal is whatever the data looks like here, do just as little bit of data transformation as you possibly can and move it into here. And so it's basically just pure replication. And so then here's where we go for our data, and that should match up with that 100%. And so that's the first step, is building out that data lake. And then from there, you can then combine the data and like turn it into if you think about students, and you might have students across all of these different platforms, but to get one unified picture of, hey, how much does the student get in, financial aid, and, where do they live, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have to bring all that together. So the way that you avoid that is through this concept of a data lake, which means try to touch the data as little as possible from source and getting it into that data lake.
How much do you lose?
Hopefully nothing.
Hopefully nothing. So sometimes it's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be good, especially when you're using tools like these companies right here. They specialize in that data movement. And people will pay a lot to use those tools. And so relying on those tools, it can be really helpful and speed up that process and make sure that that data matches up. And, any data engineer here, this is like probably, it's somewhat technical, but they may be doing testing. And so they'll run tests, data quality tests, to make sure that all the data is matching up. Yeah. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah.
Is the term Kafka connector a Snowflake thing, or is that like an industry thing?
That's an industry thing. So there's a a thing called Kafka out there, and this is streaming. We call it streaming data, which means when you have these high-powered applications that are constantly running, like think of like, it's, especially with like a website, think of like clicks. You know, people are clicking on your website, and every single click that you have is being tracked. That's so much data that's constantly moving. You push it to this thing called a stream. So it just kind of exists in this place where it's you think of it like literally a pipe, like a pipeline. And so it's sitting there, but you want to do stuff with it. And you want to, you know, maybe the click should go over here and we'll give them an ad. And we also need some of it to end up here for reporting and analytics. So that's the concept of Kafka and a stream. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Okay. So real quickly, why is Snowflake different? Because we've talked about like, hey, you could choose Microsoft, AWS, Google. There's so many different options out there. So this is why we're different. This gets a little bit technical. So you're not going to be tested on any of this stuff, guys. So it doesn't matter. But the idea is that at its very center, we call it optimized storage. You want to store data. So inside of AWS, there's a lot of different products and tools you can use inside the cloud. Like most people use it for servers, you know, they have these virtual servers that are running in the cloud. We also have this product called S3, which is being able to store files and you can store it for insanely cheaply. So it's $23 per terabyte per month. And so people can store like, you know, thousands and thousands of terabytes, and it's a very small amount. This is different from like the past, where if you wanted to store a terabyte in the past, you know, you would have to have your own like server room, essentially, your own data center that you would store, and it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when you store data into Snowflake, it gets stored into there, which means you could store as much data as you want. We have customers. I mentioned today when in passing that one of our customers is Epic Games. They make like Fortnite, and so you know, those kids playing those games, they're doing stuff, joining battles or whatever the heck you do on that, and then everything that you're doing, like millions of users at a time, is being streamed into Snowflake. And so you can imagine like literally petabytes of data is being stored into Snowflake. Now, when you want to access that data, historically what people did was they installed SQL Server on a literal computer, the server, and that server would have a certain amount of RAM and a certain amount of storage. So let's just say this server could hold 5 terabytes, and you know, it had 16 gigabytes of RAM or something like that. Okay, well, what happens when you now have 6 terabytes of data? Well, you have to get another server, and they have to somehow connect these, reinstall everything. So that's not the way it works with Snowflake. It's at the click of a button, it's ready to go. You can compute your data. And then this cloud services part, you know, all of the IT people, you know, they think that's the coolest thing on earth because that's their job is infrastructure. And so if you say, hey, you don't have to manage infrastructure, you just have to focus on data, they're happy with that. So yeah, this is optimized storage that we're talking about. We can ingest structured data. That's like a table. Semi-structured, that's JSON. If you've seen JSON, it's like it has these curly brackets and stuff. And you could just store that directly inside of Snowflake. Then also unstructured data, that's like text and PDFs, being able to work with that. Yeah, this gets a little bit technical here, but I'm just going to point these things out to you because you'll eventually hear this stuff one day when you go to work. Wherever you're going to work, they're going to have a data warehouse. They're going to be talking about that. They're going to be talking about their data lake. Data lake just means all of your raw data in one location. Data warehouse usually means that it's a little bit more structured. Someone's thought through something and said, hey, we want to report on our students. Okay, well, here's the students table. It's already all cleaned up and everything like that. And then you're going to potentially hear people talk about a lake house. You can see that that's a combination of a data lake and a warehouse in the same location. All you need to know, if you hear any of these terms, is this is where all of your data is stored, and that's where you go to access your analytics and reports. Yeah, so here's some interesting numbers. Just so you could see the scale of some of the data out there. Snowflake processes about 4 billion queries every single day. And so that's a lot. That's a lot. So we have a massive platform. The largest number of rows in any given customer table is 72 trillion rows. Like I don't even know what that could possibly be. That's someone clicking around a website. I have no clue. The aggregate amount of compressed. So when we store your data into Snowflake, it gets compressed. So if you have data in a database and it's like a terabyte, we'll compress it down to like a third of a terabyte or half a terabyte. So we have about 171 petabytes, which is 1,000 terabytes. A petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. And so that's the amount of data stored by just the 5 largest customers of Snowflake. So you could imagine we have like 5,000 or 6,000 customers. And so that's just 5 of them, the top 5. So we have a lot of data. Okay, I'm going to pause there. That's Snowflake in general. We haven't even talked about AI or anything like that. But this is just kind of setting the scene of this is what, you know, any organization that you guys are going to, they are bringing all their data together. They're making it available to their employees. People are reporting on it. There's probably a data team managing this. Usually what we're talking about is often done by like the IT teams. But the users of the data would be the accounting folk, the operations, and like that's what your job is probably going to be. You're going to be going into Power BI or Tableau or whatever it may be, and you're going to be accessing reports. You're going to be pulling down data. You're going to maybe pull it into Excel, do whatever you're going to do there. But that's really what your job is going to be. Somebody working with data. You probably won't have to deal with anything that I just mentioned, but maybe you will. I mean, I was a CPA, and this is what I do now. So any questions about just Snowflake in general or like the data world? Yeah.
So with all the petabytes of storage, is it just like stored like in a physical computer at your servers, or?
No, so we use, so we don't have any data centers. We use AWS, Azure, or Google, GCP, Google Cloud Platform. And so when you move data to Snowflake, what's actually happening is you're storing it in a table in Snowflake, but we take that data and then we compress it and encrypt it, make it very secure. Then we store it in this optimized format and we stick it in AWS, like if that's what you choose. So you end up, our customers choose, hey, I want to be on AWS in the US West 2 region. Okay, so when they go and load data into a table, it ends up in a Snowflake managed AWS account, and we're using their technology. And so we don't have any servers or anything like, or I mean, I'm sure we do somewhere, but not a ton. Like we're one of the, what I hear is we're one of the top 5 spenders for AWS. So yeah, great question. Any other questions? Anyone want to do this for a living?
Does AWS try and compete with you then? I mean, are they
Oh, yeah.
putting that layer on top of it?
It's very interesting because we work really closely with AWS because AWS is huge, you know, so they'll go in to like, let's just since we're here at UVU, and I don't think you guys work with AWS, so this is super hypothetical. But let's just say AWS came in and sold to UVU. They would say, hey, you guys have a massive data center. You have tons of servers. How about we move those onto our infrastructure? And you guys don't have to deal with like the physical infrastructure anymore. And, you know, they would go sell, you know, millions of dollars. And then part of that would be, oh, hey, you guys have a data warehouse. Well, how about you move it to AWS too? But they may say, hey, we kind of like Snowflake. And in that case, what AWS sees is, oh, okay, like we're going to sell these guys $1 million worth of infrastructure services, and here comes Snowflake. Yeah, they can do whatever the heck they want. Like, we actually pay the AWS reps. They get a commission from us. And so there is a little bit of a partnership there. We kind of call it a co-opetition because it's like we're cooperating, and they would probably not hesitate to throw us under the bus if their customer wanted to use their technology. But if we happen to be there and the customer says, hey, we want to use Snowflake, they would totally welcome us in, and we would work together. So it's an interesting play. Yeah, any other questions?
What's your competitive edge then?
It's so it's kind of what we talked about. Like, to use those services, like, you have to have cloud experts. Like, if you're going to have a data warehouse on Azure, Microsoft Azure or AWS, you have to have cloud experts to say, even though you're not managing physical infrastructure, you're still managing this virtual infrastructure. And that's a hard skill to learn still. And then to be honest, we literally just have a better product that is way easier to use. It's more flexible. Part of that was that they had old technologies that they ported to the cloud. So let's say that, like, Microsoft, for example, they have the product called Microsoft SQL Server, which is a very popular database. Now, when they moved to the cloud and created a data warehouse in the cloud, what they did was said, hey, we already have SQL Server. Everyone knows how to use it. We're going to move that there. But it's still that concept of basically a box, but moved to the cloud. And so ours is different, where we use all of the resources that are available in the cloud. So we were invented after the cloud was invented. And so we said, hey, here's super cheap storage. Here's really fast compute that the cloud providers are offering. We're going to use their technology to piece it together and make it easy to use. So there are companies out there that will try to do that, but then you're essentially competing with Snowflake. Like, we have top engineering talent to build this product. You can also go onto Amazon. You can store all of your data in S3. You can use EC2 servers to compute the data, but it's going to take you years and years and years. And what does a company want to focus on? They just want their data. They shouldn't care about wanting to build their own software platform. So that's a competitive edge, is that we focus on simplicity, trying to make things easier and easier and easier. We try to be like the Apple of like the data world versus like the Microsoft of the data world, which it's, some people like that. Yeah, good question. Okay, AI. So this is what we call the journey from data insight to action. This is like what any company is going to be doing and focusing on, of what we call a data maturity model, how mature their organization is with data. It all starts with answering this question: what happened? So you'll be so surprised that, all these accounting people, what all you're really, I mean, not all, but what you're really doing is you're reporting on stuff that already happened. You'll be so surprised to find so many companies and organizations can't even answer that question. Like, if you were to say, how many customers do we currently have? Which customers have churned in the last 30 days? Can they even answer that question? A lot of companies can't. You'll be really surprised. This is even some of the larger companies, even, the state government, they can't answer simple questions like what happened. That's the very first thing you got to do. So how are you going to do that? You're going to bring your data together and build out very simple reports. And then what you're going to want to do next is say, well, why did that happen? Why did our customers churn? Why did they stop using the product? Okay, well, the way that you're going to answer that's called diagnostic. You're going to build out ways for people to do statistics on it, build out more interactive reports where they can kind of drill in and see things. The next step is, well, what will happen? That's forecasting. How many customers will churn? Which customers specifically are at risk of churning? So that's predictive. That is like machine learning. And then we get to prescriptive, which is just like, tell me how to do this. Like, how can we prevent these customers from churning? Just tell me what to do. And so this is like, most companies are not here. You need AI for this pretty much. This is like machine learning. Machine learning is a little bit more computer-based, data scientists, that's what they focus on. This is like the way of AI. And then from there, it's like, how do we just automate all this stuff? Like, once we know that they're gonna churn, like, can we just like spit out emails automatically? Can we just automate this whole thing? And so this is a hard thing to get to. I'd say the majority of people who use data, like they're kind of here. And then they can kind of figure out why are our customers churning. They can kind of get to like what will happen in the future. They might have a data scientist or two that starts predicting. And so Snowflake, with your data in one place, we want to enable our customers to use AI. And so we have a set of tools that you can use where you can use AI on your data. This all comes stemming from like LLM functions. So LLM, that's like ChatGPT. So it's large language models. That's where you can kind of chat with an AI and return text. And what those models are really doing, like to simplify it, very simplified, but like when you text someone and you'll see that there's like a predicted like next word, that's all these not all, like they're very sophisticated, but that's what they're doing. They're predicting what the next word is essentially. So LLMs are very text-based. So this is great for if you have large amounts of text inside of your data. We have a series of functions you can use to use LLMs on your data. We just try to make it easy. Again, you're not having to like build out APIs and use data engineering. And then we do support our customers. So we kind of call it like, this is like the easy button over here. And then we have some like pretty intense stuff that, our biggest customers can train their own LLMs and things like that. But the majority of our customers are not going to be doing that. So this gets a little bit specific, but we'll kind of run through it. And then I'll show you guys a demo of how this all works. But yeah, so Snowflake Cortex, this is how we use your data, anyone's data with LLMs, giving people the ability to do this very easily. You can see that there's some functions here, being able to translate text and get sentiment detection just by running a little function, being able to chat with, pass in data into an LLM and things like that. Some other things that are kind of interesting that are coming along is the way that AI is making people's lives easier when it comes to data is a lot of our customers will have data that looks like this, in a PDF document. And how do you extract that out? That's like not structured at all. Like this is for the human eye. A human can make sense of that, but historically computers cannot really make sense of that. Because that's organized as like a human report. And so what Snowflake can do is you can use an LLM to read data out of PDFs that look like that and be able to extract them and get them into a table format and make it really easy. And it's very interesting that the way that you would do that is you actually, since it is LLM based, you actually ask the LLM a question. So you can say, hey, what's the employee name? And you literally ask it a question, what is the employee name? And it will go and read this, and through LLMs, it'll make a guess and say, we think it's Merrill in this case. And so it goes and puts that in there, and then you train a model, which means you're training this AI to know what the right answer is, and then you can go and apply that to all of your different documents. Using AI, you can also search across Snowflake. This has also been a thing that's been difficult for any database company out there. Yeah.
Just on your last slide,
Yeah.
I was curious. Since your billing model is just for usage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is something like that, how heavily does that use computing resources?
So this actually does a lot because it's doing a handful of things. It's training a model, which is very compute intensive, and it needs a lot of like RAM and even like what we call GPU, so graphical processing units. And so that's, I think the way that we do this is that we'll charge more for that compute, but it still is consumption based. Like you're not charging a license to use that product. So if people use it, they'll hopefully like it and they'll be training this model, which is going to be consuming things. And then they're going to be applying that model to new PDFs coming in to extract the data out. And hopefully it's on a very ongoing basis to get revenue. Yeah.
I was curious, do you know what the average percent accuracy is for reading the PDFs, and does it change for like certain types of PDF documents? Like,
So it's pretty, so the ability to read the text is really good because that technology has actually been around for a long time. And so that piece is not all that hard and new. The hard part is that we could go and read all of that text and it's super unstructured, right? Like it's not in a format where, like, if you think of an Excel file and you have a header and then like everything underneath that, like a computer can read that stuff really easily. But this is just kind of like free form text after it reads everything. And so that's where the LLM comes into play and says, like, can we make sense of this free form text? And that part is hard. And that part is why we use AI versus like, you know, being able to program that. And so that piece is hard. Yeah.
So can you read other text, text other than English?
That's a good question. I don't know, but you know, Snowflake is a global company, and so I think that if that's not there yet, like it should be there soon. I would think.
It just the OpenAI is really bad with any text other than.
Yeah, I think that's
So I'm
tough.
curious about if you develop your own, and it is a global company that you must be dealing with documents that in different languages, how you deal with the different type of text.
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one though, but that's it's a good question. And we actually, I don't think we may be building some of our own stuff, but we actually do leverage a lot of open source models. So like Meta, the company that owns Facebook, has an open source model called Llama 2. And so we take that model, we host it inside of Snowflake. And one of the interesting aspects about LLMs in general and why people would want to use an LLM on Snowflake versus like doing it yourself. So for example, I think it was Samsung found that some of their company secrets were leaked through ChatGPT. So that means that one of their, you know, analysts or whatever pasted some stuff into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT learned from it and then was able to give that answer back to someone else. And so obviously we have, you know, any company that you work with, if they've thought about it, they'll probably be against company policy to paste any company data into ChatGPT. And so that's a big concern. And so when it's inside of Snowflake, what we do is we allow one model per customer. And so if they're talking to that model, we know that it's not going to be, it's not going to like ingest your company secrets and then give it to another customer. So that's one of the biggest issues when it comes to LLMs. Right back here.
So there's pasting into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But can it learn from it? Just asking it a question, it tells me that it isn't learning from my information I give it. But it doesn't, it's not that advanced yet. I don't know.
Like ChatGPT. Yeah, I don't think it's really weird where people, it's one of those like, it's so new and it's a black box that I think it was surprising that these like Samsung company secrets got leaked, where it's, it seemed like it was because someone pasted it in. So I don't really know. I don't know exactly how that works and how ChatGPT would learn.
It
from
must
that.
retain all the questions that it's asked, right?
That's one of the things about like when you think Chat GPT, like if you subscribe to it or log on to it and use it, it's literally like one model that you're working with versus like each person could host a model. And so that's what like Azure, for example, they work with OpenAI and they host, you can get like your own version of Chat GPT, you can kind of host it in Azure. So that's a little bit safer that you can, but it's harder to do because it's like it's your own version and it's not as good as Chat GPT 4, right? So, but for whatever reason, yes, some company secrets got leaked through Chat GPT through Samsung. But yeah.
The customers using this now.
So this is currently kind of a beta feature, but we do have customers using it. Yeah, and it works pretty well. I've tested it out with a few customers, and it's a little bit hit and miss. We had one customer who wanted to read like letters, more of paragraph form, versus these, which are slightly more structured, even though it's not quite like a uniform structure, but it did not do as well with just free forms like a letter. But yeah, it does okay.
The reason I ask is, I
Yeah.
mean, this is a job. I mean, this is
Yeah.
usually a job, like a frontline data entry
Yeah.
in accounting or finance. And I think that kind of a position is at risk because these tools, even if they're a little more expensive, they can replace a person at that level. Those jobs, I think, are just
Data entry jobs, yeah, and
more in danger of.
yeah, it sucks for the data entry people out there, but I mean, hopefully you guys aren't going to be data entry people.
Exactly,
So,
right? Like we're hoping that everyone is beyond that anyway.
like for me, I'd be like so happy, of like, oh my gosh, I don't have to freaking enter these PDFs anymore. But like, there are jobs out there that are data, like that's all they do all day, and yeah, I would imagine that those jobs start to disappear.
I agree with Noah's comment, and to your comment, that is, it's a hit and miss. Isn't it like the training model is an iterative improvement process? Suppose maybe you have a totally different document, it doesn't scan well. Isn't it true that your developer team or coding team improvise on top of it and try to fix that issue?
Yeah, so like in this case, what happens is you'll see that there's a score attached to these.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, it thinks that the address is that. You can go and feed it the right answer, so then it knows. And so you would train on like maybe like 20 PDFs and then start to go and apply that. What you would still need to do is have some level of
still a human approval.
Yeah.
Not fully automated.
Yeah, exactly. Like you would want to continue to monitor it and make sure that it's feeding the right data and checking back and then maybe retraining the model. Like if like a new PDF type comes in and it's like slightly different format and maybe those ones aren't doing as well, maybe you would add a few of those, train the model on those as well too, and it should get better. But yeah, definitely some human involvement still here. Yeah, did you have a question? Or I think someone over here.
Yeah, I was just asking about how many documents, like free form of this, does it take for the LLM to understand?
Yeah.
What it is you want as an answer?
Yeah, maybe about 20 or so. And then you could go apply that to like the thousands typically. Yeah.
So you're saying that your customer, each individually will have their own model. So does that mean that for the built-in large language model, you use the specific company's documents to train it and use it? Or where does your training data come from then?
Yeah, so it's the open source model that Meta built, and so they'll come out with new versions of it. But what it is not is a generalized like public AI, which is what ChatGPT is, where it's like everyone can use it and it's the same model. And maybe that gets better and everyone, is getting those benefits. What we're talking about is that this model is going to exist inside of this Snowflake infrastructure, like the Snowflake network. And so when you interact with it, it's going to be already pre-trained by Meta. But they can release new versions of it, and maybe we haven't released caught up with those versions. So it's again like that's what people have to think through if they want to use AI internally. And so hopefully what Snowflake does is abstract that a little bit and just say, hey, here's this model. You know, it's already pre-trained. You can use it. You're not having to upgrade different versions. We're just going to keep track of all that stuff, manage it for you, and we're going to make sure that it's all secure. And so that's the benefit of using Snowflake. But the technical concept is that the model exists. Like you can, like, I don't know what the term is, like download it or install it on Snowflake infrastructure. That's handled by us. And yeah, but it's open source technology. So we're not training on it. Like Meta did it.
Okay. And if I'm using your product, then I guess my documents are not being used as training data, let's say for NOAA, if
Yeah.
it's another customer, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you been facing any challenges relating to data governance and sensitive data regulations?
Yeah, all the time. So I work in the state and local governments, and so that's what they care about, and that's where we end up, winning deals. Is that they come to us with problems of saying, hey, we have super sensitive data. We have social security numbers. We have HIPAA data because it might be like Medicaid. We have data about, child welfare, which is like very sensitive. We have these minors who've been involved in certain situations. So there's extremely sensitive data. And that's one of the aspects of why people choose Snowflake is because we do have first of all, bringing your data into one place is going to be a lot easier to govern that versus saying, hey, if you want access to this, we're going to have to give you a user into the SQL server, and then you're going to have to pull data over here and over here. And so it's like, how do we control this one person accessing, 10 different databases versus, hey, we've already predefined what you're allowed to see. And, maybe one person can see all the social security numbers because they need that for their job. Another person can see that same data set and it's all blocked out. And so there's a lot of governance tools you can put in with your data. And that's an extremely important part. Everyone cares about that. And yeah, it's very interesting that with Snowflake, people are initially worried of saying, hey, we have our data on premise. So it's like we physically store our data and you're telling us to move it to Snowflake. Like that's not secure, you guys own it. But we pride ourselves and win on security. We have a lot of security features where we're like top of the line. So like, for example, we're FedRAMP High certified. So that's like the top level governments can load their data into Snowflake. And so it ends up being that their security teams review Snowflake and just say, oh yeah, this is awesome. This is the place where we want to store data because they're the ones caring about security. They're the ones with the security experts that are going to protect our data. So
And Brock,
yeah,
I'm sure your company might be having a security team, right, who is working with all the security lawyers and so on. So
Yeah.
before starting or approving any feature, they make sure that they have the right approvals before they can start a feature.
exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're talking about like security, and you guys use AWS. Do you guys utilize their hard data server places to like store the file?
Yeah. So we use they have like a massive, for example, they have a massive data center in Oregon. That's called their US West 2 region. And data does get physically stored there, but it's through the internet that it goes there and gets stored in their data center and then gets stored physically there.
So then if they were ever compromised with your guys' software, your data would be compromised potentially in some way?
Potentially, what we do is so it gets stored there, and that's extremely secure because they're also like FedRAMP High, and that's also what they pride themselves on. That's how they win deals, is that they have a more secure data center than what anyone else can make. But let's just say that something did happen there. What we do is, so there's a handful of things. First of all, let's just say that like a storm wipes out a data center. And like, let's just say it catches off, someone blows it up, terrible situation, it gets blown up. AWS has what's called an availability zone. So within any region, so if you are saying, hey, I'm storing my data in US West 2, what AWS does is they say, well, we're on 3 availability zones. They have 3 data centers. And so you would have to blow up all 3 data centers to bring down a region. which doesn't happen. And so we leverage that, first of all, is that we automatically replicate across all the different availability zones, which is hard to do if you do it by yourself. So that's why, people come to us. But let's just say that something gets compromised, someone somehow hacks into AWS directly, which doesn't happen. They encrypt data, we encrypt data. So it's like encrypted multiple times over. Yeah, so it's an interesting question, but it hasn't happened yet. Like no hacker has like hacked all of AWS, for example. Yeah.
Could be a little tangent, but do you have an AI model that checks your cybersecurity?
Oh, like, is that for like our customers or like company or for like Snowflake?
Just like, I guess for Snowflake, but just for personal understanding of how good your security is, like, is that something that you guys are interested in, or is your model secure as it is?
Yeah, so we do a lot of auditing. Like, so anything that we're doing, we're putting like a stamp of approval on it, and then we get auditors to come in and check it out. And then so they will issue reports, and then that's what our customers want to see is, hey, prove to us that you're meeting like SOC 2 compliance, which is all of our controls, which is what, the accountants of the world are actually probably going to be working on when they go, is figuring out controls and auditing those controls. That's what internal auditors do. So we have internal auditors, we audit our own stuff, and we hire external auditors, they double check it and issue reports. That's how we do that. For our customers themselves, we do have an aspect of like, I don't know if you'd call it AI or if it's more like someone programmed it, but we do have the ability that someone could do a security check on their own data and get a report back to say, hey, here are our recommendations. Like, you have too many people who have access to these data sets. You have too many people that could go in and delete data or change it or something like that. So we kind of do it both ways, but I don't think we use AI in that way. Potentially we do, but I think we probably rely more heavily on auditors internally. Yeah.
So those auditors, security auditors especially, they are very tough guys. They won't let you run the business if they find any holes issues.
Yeah.
So if they have given your approval, I'm sure, you guys have strong security measures.
Yeah, because if we don't, then we lose a lot of customers. Like, and we lose credibility, and that's you have to be on top of that stuff. Yeah, these are a few of the other features. This is kind of interesting, where very surprisingly, I think a lot of you will actually learn how to write SQL in your lives. If you haven't already, like, you'll probably learn it on the job. Someone will say, hey, go pull this report. You'll probably be working with Power BI or Tableau or any of those other reporting softwares, which interact and send SQL statements to a tool like Snowflake to return data. And so you'll probably end up learning that stuff. But what Snowflake has is this is a preview feature too. This is actually really what we found is really hard to build, which is asking a question of saying, like, show me the results for each month of 2021 and having it be basically text to SQL. That's a tough thing to do, mainly because there's not that much data out there in the world. Like, you could go scan all of Stack Overflow. I mean, that's about it, right? Stack Overflow is a place where people go and ask questions, and technical people will answer them. And so when you think about public things of people asking, text, and here is the answer in SQL, there's not that much of it, especially when it gets complicated. So we found that this has been kind of a hard thing to implement, but it's working there. That's our goal is that we want people to just work in their language and have it spit out a SQL statement. What this will end up looking like in the future is the ability to chat with your data, where you can say what happened in 2021, and then what Snowflake's doing on the back end is generating a SQL statement, running it, getting the results back, running the analysis, and giving you an answer back. So that's the future, but that's a hard future to get to, and no one is currently doing that. There's a few companies out there that are doing pretty well. There's a BI tool called ThoughtSpot that is pretty good, and that one, you tend to have good data. So you give it good data. That's the first thing. So it means it has to be cleaned up. And then that tool lets you ask it a question. You can say, show me the revenue for all of the months of 2021, and it's going to automatically generate a report. But that's kind of based on the fact that you've given it good data. That's one of the hard things is there's a popular tool. I think it's SAP that I'm thinking of, but like SAP is an incredibly popular tool, financial tool. But that backend database, if you were to see it, all of the columns are like, SA underscore, 2RS or something, and it means nothing to anyone. And so you can't give that to an AI and have it answer any questions. It has no clue which one is revenue. It has no clue, what's the customer name or anything like that. And so that there's still going to be this aspect of this raw data that doesn't make any sense. And the better and better you get it, where it's more cleaned up, more standardized, the better these results are going to get. We're about out of time, so I don't know if I'll be able to show you guys this LLM demo, or maybe I will real quick because it'll only take a second. But this is Snowflake. So this is all hosted in the cloud. It's through the browser. I'm just going to show you. This is kind of user imagination here. Like this is kind of the future of where we see people working with their data. So you can build small little applications inside of Snowflake, which is what this is. And then this is where you have to use your imagination a little bit. We did this demo for Maricopa County out, and that's the county where Phoenix is at. And so we're going to use a chat bot. And the idea is they have animal control. They care about that. People call into animal control. There might be a big call transcript, and no one has time to read this or understand it. But if you had all that data in Snowflake, this is where you use your imagination. You can start asking questions of your data, like, hey, what happened in this call? And you would get a response back. In this call, some stray dog, John Doe called. And then you can start asking it, other questions, like, was the call resolved? And literally, using a chat bot, but against your own data. Yes, the call was resolved. What animal was involved.
So could you then turn that into structured data? Is that where this is going? That you pull out the details and create an actual record?
Yeah, I think you could. That would be part of it. And that's probably nearer term, is that you can do that without the chatbot. Is like you can run a function and try to get an answer out of this and just say, hey, let's start doing analytics on what type of animals we're responding to based on our call transcripts. If we can pull that out. The hard part is that you can't fully control what an LLM says. It's like, was the call resolved? Yes, and then a bunch of crap that you don't need, right? So
prompts, though, I bet you could.
yeah. So that's where there's a thing called prompt engineering. It's not really engineering. It's just trying to figure out the best way to prompt an AI. And you could even, this is where prescriptive comes into play. What advice would you give to the representative to improve this call? And here's 4 pieces of advice that someone could do to improve their calls. So this is the future. This is where we see it. You have all this data, especially text-based data, and the ability to kind of this is how you work with data instead of, hey, I'm gonna build out all these tables and build out these dashboards and try to glean insights. Can I just ask the freaking question and get the response back? And so that's what we probably see it going towards. Yeah. So that's it. So any questions? And we have 1 minute, but I'm willing to stick around.
Unrelated question though. Since your company is a data storage company,
Yeah.
and how people make decisions, and I guess my question is what do you think about the potential use of blockchain?
Oh, blockchain?
Is it something that your company looking into?
Probably not. Out there, and there's specific use cases that where blockchain makes sense, but it's more of on the application level, meaning maybe a finance application and it makes sense where everyone knows what happened. But no, that's not where we're gonna, I don't think we'll spend our time. We care about bringing data together and analytics, and we have a platform where it's specifically structured to answer, process large amounts of data and get those answers out. So that's probably what we're going to focus on rather than like at the blockchain level. That's a good question though. Yeah.
What kind of like certifications do you need to just be like working at Snowflake in an entry position like that?
Yeah, so it wasn't necessary, but I got a certification in AWS. And if you're interested at all in working in IT at all, like at that level, I would say that that's helpful because like, even though I got a graduate degree in information systems, like it wasn't as hands-on to be like, okay, I could come out of there and like know how to, understand the network or understand how to, create a database and store it somewhere. And so getting a certification in one of the cloud platforms would be interesting and helpful, I think, in today's world, if you wanted to work in IT. Maybe overkill, but that's what I found. No one cares about certifications, to be honest, but it can help you get that entry level job, and you're going to get way more, you're going to learn way more skills on the job, but sometimes you need that certification to get your foot in the door. But then after that, no one cares. Like once you have the job, then like, you're not like, oh, you have the certification, like, that's great, you can do X, Y, and Z. But if it helps you get your foot in the door, then it could be helpful. But yeah, I like the AWS certification, or if you're interested in Azure or GCP, like one of those. Yeah, but the other thing would be like learning SQL. You could go online and learn SQL, or take a database class here, and you can learn SQL, and that's super helpful. What was that?
We're getting a class set up.
Oh, you are? Nice. Cool.
Kill's aware of that.
That should be a good one. Cool. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last question, do you guys offer any training for students or?
Yeah. So any student that signs up with Snowflake, if you search Snowflake free trial, it's going to, yeah, it's this one right here, signup.snowflake.com. So if you use your, I think we're still doing this, but by default, you can log in and test this out. You get 30 days free and $400 worth of credits, which is a lot. Like you won't use that much unless you're, trying something crazy, which go for it. That's awesome. But if you use your school email, I think you get 90 days. And so that could be an interesting option. And then we have a lot of, so if you go to like quickstarts.snowflake.com, there's a lot of topics. A lot of these get really technical, but these are little labs you can do, and we provide all of the data. And so there's one that's called Zero to Snowflake right here. And this would kind of walk you through what is it like to use Snowflake, load data, run some queries, and then we give you all the data so you don't have to go and like look for that, and we give you all the statements to run and things like that. So yeah.
Thanks. Great answers. Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Any other questions?
Snacks and food over there, grab some.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Brock.
Yeah.
Sometimes, well, we only hear the AI applications and so on, but seeing the actual presentation and understanding a bit more from customer side is great. So thanks for coming.
Yeah.
This was a great presentation. Thank you.